remind you all that stuff, let you know that it's me, say what's up. Let me see this chat here. And so I mean, can I talk about GameStop? What can I say about GameStop? I mean, the funny thing is that I have a lot of the same feelings about everything. You know, it's you kind of. I mean, I've talked a lot about GameStop and how I feel about the situation and all that. And I thought I wanted to hop on and kind of reiterate a lot of my viewpoints that I had previously. I think, remember, if you remember my previous thoughts on the company and the opportunity, there was kind of like a two-part thesis to it. And that second part of the thesis is a reinvention of the business model, or a transformation, whatever you want to call it. And I just, to remind people who, if you haven't seen my materials, is that we're in that second part of it here, where it's less about, I see over the past couple of years, I see an overemphasis on like that legacy business. And it's just, there's no it matters. It's not that it doesn't matter, of course. But they're in the transformation stage here, and what could they transform into? You know what I mean? There's a lot of question marks about that, understandably so. But essentially it becomes at this stage of that second part of the analysis, this transformation part, it becomes a bet on the management. You know, in particular, of course, Ryan fucking Cohen. You know what I'm saying? Ryan Cohen and his crew. And that's what folks are should be focused on, you know what I mean? And that's probably going to be an ongoing debate as to how people feel about him, whether he can successfully transform that business. And those are great discussions. And those are good discussions that need to be had. And so when I look at the situation, though, and I'm kind of going to be echoing some of the thoughts that I had previously, is that I feel like I see enough where I believe this guy might be able to do it, right? That's not a guarantee. This is the same thing as before. I mean, I'm not promising anything, but over the long term here, I think he seems like the type of guy. He seems like he has those characteristics, and the way he approaches this seems like he might be able to do this. But again, that's not a guarantee. This is kind of like, it's kind of based on feel. You've heard me say that, right? And so I have that feeling. I have this feeling, and I'm like, all right, let me reiterate some of these feelings that I have. But it remains to be seen, you know. And you should keep your eye on stuff too. Reserve the right to change your mind about stuff, just like I do. Don't follow anyone blindly. Nothing on this stream is advice. Hopefully, you all know that, right? This is the same thing. But like when I have a feeling about that, it's like, all right, well, let me share it. I could be wrong about stuff, but I think, all right, let's talk about it. And I don't know. I think he has the characteristics that he could do this. In particular, I think we can all agree GameStop finds itself in a very unique situation, just like it did last time, right? Not just in the gaming space per se, but you have a company where you actually have so many people rooting for it, right? They're rooting for it to work out, myself included. How often does that happen? That folks like really want it to work out, and it's a highly unusual position, and it's so unusual. The way you manage that situation is. You got to manage it the right way. And honestly, the way he seems to be doing it, I think he's from a distance here, right? I have no idea, but I put myself in his shoes, and I think he's kind of seems to be taking the right approach, given this very unique situation that he finds himself, that the company finds itself in. You have a lot of investors kind of following what's happening, kind of wanting it to work out. You know what I say? That's very unusual. It's a very unusual situation. And I don't know if there's not too much precedent for it. You see it with some other companies, especially when the CEOs or the managers are just so heavily investing themselves in the business, investing themselves in the turnaround. And there's some managers out there who are somewhat similar to I see it in Cohen. So that I think that he has the type of he seems to be doing the right things. And I know the question marks will be, well, what has he done? What is he doing? What's the plan? You know, those are fair questions. But, you know, do you really think he's been doing nothing, or that GameStop hasn't been strategizing, testing some things here and there, and how to move forward? I think that's pretty ridiculous. I think we've seen enough, in particular from him, to be honest. I think we've seen enough from him to think he's got a good head on his shoulders, and again, we haven't seen anything. It's speculation. You can argue that, but honestly, the way he seems to be handling this, and we don't know a plan, and that's fair. But boy, you're right-sizing the ship. You see even the legacy business cutting costs, trying to stabilize some cash flows. You know, just try to stabilize that legacy business. But now it's all about the transformation. And that cash pile is growing. It seems to be growing. Will they raise more money? We'll see. I don't know. I mean, I see it, but I think if you just change one factor, and that's that you don't think Ryan Cohen is a doofus, all right? If you don't think he's a doofus and he's not a fool, if you don't think that, and all of a sudden, suddenly they're sitting on billions of dollars in cash, right? And you actually think not only is he not a doofus, but he's extremely talented in that he has the capability to turn this around. Even if you don't agree with that, right? Even if you don't believe it, that's fine. If you just pause for a moment and think about that, I think it really changes your mindset, and so that becomes the bet. And I don't know. It's going to be a debate. But as time passes, you'll see more. That's the thing. I think some people say, "Oh, a lot of time has passed. We ain't seen shit," and that's fair too. But again, I think because of the uniqueness of the situation, I think generally in this type of case, being quiet, working on stuff behind the scenes. And thinking about what you're going to do it can be could be a good approach. That's not the end all be all, right? We'll see where it goes from there, but it's a good starting point. And I personally don't think 3 years is too long in this case. 5 years, 10 years, all right. Like if we all wait in 5 years, 10 years, and it's like, all right, we're going to be going into the pet rock business. Come on. Reserve the right to change your mind, just like I do. That's how you should approach this. But in this case, right, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And it seems like people are quick to be like, oh, well, they haven't announced anything. The legacy business is struggling. Therefore, it's over. You know what I mean? I think that's just kind of silly, just because I think it could be, it's just not proof of anything. Now, again, they start selling some pet rocks, all right, okay, let's revisit this. But right now, there's some uncertainty about it. And it becomes a bet on the management. And you'll see that this is a thing in financial markets. It's unusual that it's a public company, but if you're dealing with like a venture capital opportunity or a startup company, this is often how it works, where you may have an idea or you might have a management team that you believe on, and that tends to be what you'll focus on. And do they seem like they have the right skill set to pull it off? That's the focus. I mean, that's what I mean. This is not unusual in financial markets generally. What might be unusual is that this is a public company, right? In that you have non-institutional investors. You have non-institutional investors who are like making the case for it. That's highly unusual, but it's not unusual in financial markets. It's a little bit different this time around, and so it's just an ongoing argument, discussion, and you won't really. No one knows for sure. I mean, especially me, right? You don't follow anything I do. You see all my disclaimers and stuff. Same thing. None of this is advice. I have an aggressive style, blah, blah, blah. You know that stuff. But when you're dealing with these types of opportunities, right? I say it's unusual, but in financial, when you deal in these types of opportunities, you could lose it all. You could lose everything. They're highly speculative in nature. You should know that. These are very risky opportunities, and they are risky because there could be tremendous upside if it works out. But that's the balance, and that's why in those types of opportunities that I'm talking about, that's the trade-off. Big potential opportunities, or you could lose it all, and you kind of factor that into your analysis. And so it's the same thing here. So it becomes kind of a bet on the team. And from what I've seen so far, I think I reserve the right to change my mind, as you should too. I'm a believer right now. Let's see though. 3 years. Let's see what happens from here. But I think with a significant amount of capital, I don't know. I think let's see. Let's see where it goes from here. But that's kind of a reiteration of a lot of stuff I said in my last stream. There was two parts of the thesis. Then this part of the thesis, if you remember, I ascribed at the time, I'm like, well, we can't even discuss this. It was like the bottom of that Word document that I had. I was like, well, let's discuss this when it comes. Well, it came. That kind of first part worked out, and now it's a discussion about this other stuff. So, I mean, I'm probably, you know me, I'm rambling now at this point. I'm